When I was a kid, technology felt like magic. I remember opening a game and thinking, someone made this. Someone sat in front of a computer and somehow created an entire world. The menus, the music, the weird glitches, the feeling that something digital could feel alive. And for some reason, that fascinated me. I think a lot of people who became developers felt something similar. Technology didn't feel like corporate. It felt creative, like art, like invention, like this weird superpower where you can sit in front of a computer and create something from nothing. So naturally, I became a developer. And somehow this is where I ended up. Meetings, documents, tickets, and approvals. And recently I've been asking myself a weird question. Has AI turned software development into a blue-collar job? Or maybe it was becoming one already. I didn't get into software development because I love enterprise architectural designs. I didn't get into it because of sprint planning. Frankly, I didn't know that existed. I got into it because creating software felt impossible. I still remember the feeling of changing a few lines of code and suddenly something on the screen changing. It felt like cheating reality, like, wait, I can just make computers do things? That feeling is addictive. And if you're anything like me, you've probably also had these thoughts of what software development will look like. You imagine building things, solving problems, creating products, maybe even changing the world a little. You imagine yourself as this sort of mix between engineer and an artist. And for a while, these dreams do feel real, especially if you're learning. Every week you become smarter, you create a new program, you work on a new project, you discover new technologies. You feel like you're becoming closer and closer to that person. The person who builds cool things, the person behind the curtain. But then you enter the industry. And at first, it feels exciting. You get a big code base, real users, real problems, and you feel like you're having an impact and becoming more legitimate with every code push. But slowly things start to shift. You realize that your day is not actually about building. It's about coordination, getting approvals, making sure there is a paper trail, trying to get alignment from other teams. There are meetings, reviews, tickets, deployments, and then more meetings. Sometimes it feels like we created software just to have more meetings about software. And I started noticing something uncomfortable. The thing I loved about software was creation, but a lot of the job felt like process, like optimization, like moving tickets through a system. And maybe that sounds cynical, but I think a lot of developers, especially younger ones entering the industry, quietly feel this. And that's where the factory feeling started to creep in. I started thinking about this recently. Maybe software changed, or maybe software scaled. Because early software engineering feels closer to craftsmanship. Small team, generalist, people hacking things together, building weird stuff, experimenting, breaking things. But at scale, everything changes. Companies want predictability, consistency, process. You can't run a company with thousands of engineers on pure creativity. So naturally, things become standardized, specialized, measurable, efficient. And suddenly software development feels less like an art studio and more like a metallurgy plant. Not because the work isn't intelligent, but because systems naturally optimize for output. And maybe software engineering started becoming industrial long before AI ever showed up. AI just made it harder to ignore.
Then, everything changed when the
AI
attacked.
And then generative AI arrived. And in the beginning, I loved it, and I still do. It feels magical when you're entering a prompt into a chatbot and suddenly you have code and things are happening on the screen. It's just like that feeling I had when I was a kid. And as time went on, you slowly started drifting towards the question of, if AI can already create all this amazing code, what value am I adding? And maybe that sounds dramatic, but I think for a long time, developers were valued because coding was the hard part of the job. Because you spent years of learning and understanding what the best architecture is and how it's best to design the code. And now a junior engineer with no pre-existing experience, or even not an engineer at all, can generate loads and loads of text or code by just prompting. And that raises an uncomfortable question. If coding becomes cheap, what is the thing that's valuable? Is it judgment, taste, or communication ability? Maybe. But more importantly, it forced me to confront an interesting idea. Maybe the thing that I loved about software was not the job. Maybe it was the act of creation itself. And this is where I think I finally understood what was bothering me. Maybe I confused software engineering with creation. Those aren't always the same thing. Big companies optimize for scale, and scale creates process. It's not evil, it is the natural way of things. But building your own thing feels different. It feels messy, creative, personal. And in fact, AI makes it even better, because now I can buy myself perform the work much quicker and without needing a specialized team to support me. Maybe the future isn't software developers disappearing. Maybe it's smaller teams, more ownership, smaller scale. Because the kid who fell in love with technology wasn't dreaming about Jira tickets. He was dreaming about creating things. And maybe that part never really disappeared. Maybe I forgot where to look.